buckle up because the candy treats are having a rebellion today. Don't beg the 30% of you that have not smashed the ever-living crap out of that subscribe button. Smash it so you guys don't miss out more awesome content. We have the next play breakdown for today. And this is actually kind of interesting because Purely was the most represented deck in the room. If you've kept up with any sort of, pre-Duelist Nexus content, you have definitely seen the fact that Purely has, it's just a consistent monster right now. Like, the deck is actually crazy. A cat that is unaffected and can do whatever the heck it wants is an issue for the game. Now, this is where the Madolche takeover happens. There were 3 duelists in this tournament that decided to step up, and they were like, I want to play Madolche today. Which is understandable. I understand, like, wanting to play Rogue and actually have a chance to try to do things. That's a pretty interesting turnover. We also had Exosister trying to do something. Exosister's gained a little bit of popularity as of late. I see that we also have, there's Unicorn and Friends. We had Tier Elements. I think it's time that the OCG just puts down tier. Alright, like, I understand you have Grassix Grainer and all the other, like, crazy power cards, but, like, I think it's time to stop. Just, the list was meant to, like, put the deck down. I understand there's always going to be a dedicated player base for it, but man, oh man, that deck is in shambles. We also had One Punk, Adamancipator, Altergeist, Despia, Access Code Turbo, Cyberstorm Access Shenanigans, 1 Alistair player, 1 Scareclaw, 1 Sky Striker, I don't recognize that, 1 Dark Magician, a Flaunderies, Pendulum Magician, Marincess, Labyrinth, and of course the super heavy Samurai Pendulum Scales of Doom. Overall, looking at like everything that we're seeing here in terms of, the representation pie chart, it looks like a pretty healthy meta. Now, as we push on into top 8 here, talk about healthy metagame. Wow. The fact that you have so much diversity present here for this top cut, excellent. So, first thing up here in top 8 is, of course, the super heavy Pendulum Scales of Craziness. And I'm telling you, once we see these Pendulum Scales touch down in the TCG, a lot of people are going to be looking around. A lot of people are going to be very concerned when they start to see how stupid that these cards get. Alright, and I've been saying that for a while. We had, of course, with the high representation, Madolche actually did creak through here into the top cut. I'm very curious to see what kind of antics that we could see with Madolche, because in terms of how this deck wants to work, I think just playing the board breaker game with Tiara Misu seems to be about the play. Purely made it on into top cut. I can't say that I'm shocked to see that yet again. Purely, once again, if you're not accurately side decking for the cat, a Kaiju, Exceed Encore, this deck is going to get you. But if you can break apart the cat, you'll usually be in a good position. We also had Flaunderies down here. What in the world are you doing, birds? Alright, so the birds actually getting a chance to see play. Remember, the Loss of Barrier statue hasn't stopped this deck from still doing stuff. It might not be like the craziness that it formerly was, but it's still a threat at the end of the day. Unicorn and Friends made it to top cut. That's actually interesting. Adamancipator cleans it on up here. And then we have Altergeist up here. Hi, Altergeist. How are you? OCG has Skill Train at 1. And Altergeist decided that today was the day that it wanted to kind of go ahead and grind against a lot of the competition here and kind of set up and do something here. And then Access Code Talker and Friends also made its way on in to the top cut here. Overall, like I said, this pie chart is incredibly diverse. That's what you want to see. Let's pass on over to top deck list. Winning our event here was none other than the super heavy Pendulum Scales of Doom. Now, the fact that we've seen in the past that this deck gets access to a cheesy FTK as well as just you get access to like Ancient Gearbox in here in terms of consistency. You have access to Metal Cruncher, and what I'm seeing here is actually Regulus built into this as well. So the entire game plan of this deck is 41 monsters. You want to set up and be able to pendulum summon out some relatively big cards. I see we also have access to, I believe, the Cheese FTK in here as well. Electromite facilitates all of the consistency that this deck wants to see in the current modern era. I also see that because we don't have any spells or traps in the main deck to meet the requirements for the Super Heavy Samurai cards, the only thing we are citing is Prohibition down here. Now, Prohibition, you get to universally declare anything that you think is going to be a threat, and then you're kind of off to the races. As long as you can stop your opponent from capitalizing on any sort of like devastating effect that would punish you, you'll be in a really good situation. I see that we are playing Daybreaker and one copy of the Divine Incarnate in here as well. I really want to play Sekka's Light in a style deck like this, but they've opted not to, and they have the card at 3. Next up here, winning our event, is none other than, or excuse me, second place, which is Purely. Now, the first thing that catches my guard here is we're playing the Vanquished Soul Link 1 down here in the extra deck. Do keep in mind that Vanquished Soul did not have any attendance for this event. Vanquished Soul has kind of started to show up and be like a crazier deck in the meta, and it's become such an annoyance for a deck like Purely that they actually have to side the Ghost Reaper down here to actually have counterplay to it. Alright, and it's not that they're dedicating, you know, crazy amounts of space to this, no. It's just, the only thing that they're doing is they're citing the Ghost Reaper to reveal that card because it is that big of a hindrance for this deck. I also see that we are dedicating Droll and Lockbird to this. Now keep in mind, across all of the versions of this deck, you've seen Volcanic Shells, you've seen, you know, Tier Element cards show up in these builds. I've also seen Dark World stuff in these builds as well. You have a lot of deck building that players have dedicated to this deck. And I think because a lot of the diversity and things have come across in terms of deck building, to see that we've cut back on a lot of the extra inclusions in this deck to kind of make the deck feel a little bit more refined, per se. I think that's actually kind of good, but yeah, the fact that they have to play Ghost Reaper for Vanquished Soul is hilarious. Next up here, we have Floowandereeze. They still have the field spell, Magnificent Map, limited to 1. I don't actually understand, like, how many duelists have become so annoyed with this deck that they've had to go after the limitations and things that they've had to put onto this deck. It still amazes me. This build, we are playing double Mega Raiza with 1 Apex Avian, which is fine. We're still focusing on double Dimension Shifter, as per usual. I see that since we also have room now, we can put the Simorgh package in here. The fact that the Simorgh package kind of opens up some extra doors for this deck is actually kind of good. Extra deck is pretty consistent. Do keep in mind down here, in the side deck, we are playing the Herald of Abyss. Herald of Abyss, due to the ruling and interaction, it's the player that forces it off of the field. So you can Herald of the Abyss declare, you know, what is it, Fairy Fëanor, and then, you know, your opponent will actually have to get rid of, you know, the big cat that they've put all the dedicated time into. So it is something relatively important to understand. I see that we're also citing the second Advent down there as well. Advent in multiple numbers is usually pretty strong. We've seen that in the TCG side of things. We're being able to, you know, have multiple answers to threats that the opponent has set up, aka floodgates or something like that. We can go ahead and distribute and do our thing. Overall, Floowandereeze list looks pretty consistently standard here. And then we have our Mathmech Code Talker OTK, baby. Firewall and Friends made this deck so much more consistent. However much Cyber support you can jam into a deck and actually still have it work out. This is your primary example of just how good Mathmech cards actually are right now. Firewall Singularity is a insanely good card. The fact that you can set up duo TKs, you do get the chance to see the new Code Talker in here, the Link 1, which actually facilitates a larger amount of the combo ceiling for this deck. I also see that we are playing a new trap card down here. I don't quite recognize that one between the Dimensional Barrier and the Red Reboot. We are citing Heralds, Thrust into Raigeki is kind of funny, I suppose. They don't even bother to thrust into Evenly Matched the way it seems. And then, of course, we are doing the Salamangreat Sanctuary shenanigans because Balanix is free real estate for this deck. Absolutely may as well, right? Gotta love it. That is everything we have for the next play event today. Please, leave a comment down below, tell me what you guys think, and I'll see your beautiful faces back here later in the day, guys. Peace out. patrons. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.